Oliver, thank you for being here. Tell us, why is there so much buzz right now about AI? It's in the news every day.
It is in the news every day, and I think AI has been around for quite a while. If you think about it, a calculator, that we've all used for our whole lives, is AI. And I think one of the reasons for the increased buzz right now is just the sort of exponential speed at which it's not only developing now, but is sort of manifest in our lives in ways that used to, I think, be more under the curtain, under the rug, where you didn't see it.
Photography, you're a photographer. Photography, when that started, there was also a buzz about the machine taking away art.
Yeah, I think anytime a new technology comes along, it is met with a lot of attention. I mean, particularly if it's a technology that is clearly a kind of rupture with the past, and it's often met with a lot of hostility. In the 19th century, the most famous critic and proponent of modernism, Baudelaire, hated photography. He said that it was going to, destroy painting, and that it was just a slavish machine, and it would destroy art. And of course, it didn't destroy painting. It did radically change it. And new technologies do tend to supplant and alter the ones that came before them. In the case of painting, it didn't have to do what photography did, which was sort of, create portraits. And while people still painted portraits, painting became more abstract. But it didn't die. It continued.
And I think also with AI, part of the reason why there's so much buzz right now is people don't understand what it really is, at least right now. I think we know what the camera is now, but with AI, it's kind of like, what are we talking, robots painting flowers? What are we talking about?
Right. How it works on the simplest level is it studies pre-existing images. There's a program that studies, learns on a language model of pre-existing images, and then in the case of visual text generators, you enter text, it draws on sort of what it understands a cat to be from what it studied of visual images that exist out there, literally billions of them, and then it replicates one. It's not actually using pieces of pre-existing imagery as much as it is learning from it.
Okay. So, I think people might have seen so-called deep fake videos, trailers or whatnot of movies. There's one with Jim Carrey, his face on Jack Nicholson in The Shining. And it's crazy because it looks really real. What kind of issues does this technology raise?
I think there's a lot of ethical issues that people are particularly focused on. Which have to, and there's also financial issues, and there's copyright issues. And all of these issues, I think, are sort of based on our understanding, again, of what came before us. So we look at something like, if someone chooses to enter text and say, make me an image in the style of, it's going to copy that other artist. But that's just one small sort of fraction of what people can do with this stuff. And of course, a painter can also paint in the style of an artist as well. So I think that's one of the issues that comes up, is this idea of authorship and copyright. There's they're all legitimate concerns, but I think in particular the ethical issues around journalism, because we live in a culture that has come to rely on photographs, even though we all know that photographs aren't real, they don't tell the truth, they still have a foot in the world of veracity and believability. And a lot of the power of journalism is undercut by these if we can't trust photographs. And I think that's a legitimate issue, which I'm hoping that in some way will be addressed, whether it's through metadata being embedded in images, or somehow we still need, hopefully, to have some kind of a semblance of truth to photographs. But I think it's also good if people distrust photographs. We shouldn't be believing necessarily what we see. And then the other issue I think that comes up is this question of originality. And that's the one that I am least concerned about, but as an artist, I hear about the most, because I think people have this vision of machines, computers making art, and it's cold, and it's inhuman, and it's soulless. But in fact, you need to be an artist to use this technology to make good art. And it's not a machine making an art, it's a person using a tool, in this case AI, to make art. Without the human, the art doesn't exist. So yeah, a lot of the sort of traditional ideas of craft that we have, whether it's painting with a paintbrush or with photography, taking a picture with the camera, a lot of that is very different now. But again, don't forget, it took photography years for it to be regarded as an art form. People thought it's just a machine, you're just pressing a button. And then it developed its own aesthetic criteria. The idea of the decisive moment with the camera being part of that.
Should artists be concerned about AI in the arts, or should they be excited?
Well, they should be both. And it depends who you are. Again, not to overuse the sort of tired metaphor of it being a tool, but it is. Fire. Is fire good or bad? It's obviously both. It's what we do with it. There's absolutely some artists who, an illustrator, for instance, or an actor, who should have legitimate concerns about, in the same way that a blacksmith had legitimate concerns when the automobile, was invented, or somebody who shoot horses. I'm excited. I've always worked with, for me, as a photographer, I've always been more interested in post-production, sort of what happens after the picture is taken. And that space between painting and photography is something that interests me a lot also.
So how do you see yourself using AI in your work?
Well, I use it a lot, and one of the things that you asked before about sort of, what is AI, and I didn't really answer that question. In my world, there are programs out there, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, and these are programs that allow people for a certain amount of money to go on there, and you enter text and you make an image. But you really, there's a whole art to what kind of, how you phrase the text, you do multiple images, you sort of, it's a long process. It's not as simple as, you could just type in, a cat playing a guitar eating a waffle, and you'll get some version of that. But, an artist can do something interesting with that. So for me, it's a starting point. It's a place to get to an image. Then I can bring it into another program like Photoshop and manipulate it more. It's also important to know that, programs like Photoshop, which was equally, derided, Adobe Photoshop and a lot of other graphics programs are all incorporating AI into it now. So the new Adobe Photoshop has the ability now to enter text and generate images within your photographs. So I'll certainly be using that. And I think one of the main issues that people have, and the thing that people get most upset about, is they see whatever medium they're attached to as dying. And I prefer to think of it as changing. Photography is dead, and it's been reborn in 100 glorious ways also. But, it's a slow process. But that sort of traditional idea of darkroom photography is really not around much anymore.
So we have a few seconds left. I just want to get your final thoughts on this. Is AI art?
Well, a simple answer, yes, of course. I tend to avoid conversations about what is art, because I think we're at a point now where generally people agree if you say it's art, and if you don't agree with that, that's fine. But that it is. But yeah, of course it is. It's if you start from nothing and you create something, you've made art.
Wonderful.
Whether it's good art or not is another question.
Well, I think this interview was a work of art.
Thank you.
Oliver, thank you very much for joining me on AHA.